Welcome back. So yes, Labour and government working on fine-tuning those terms of reference before they make them available. But 8 weeks, what they said, the timeline within which they can or should get some agreements, so to speak. Well, we've got Mr. Jacob Ella joining us here today. He is a founder and CEO of TAF Africa. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, my best friend Chamberlain, and my very best friend Mokwe.
Thank you as well.
And Ayo.
Yeah, and Buki as well. But we will go through, because we have seen some of your position paper impressions of what you require or what you like to focus on, some of the key issues. But TUC also did have a list of demands to governments before, even while that meeting went on, which we imagine are part of the items that they will be taking a look at when that negotiation goes back and forth. I don't know if you've seen some of those, but we can also see some of those highlighted right there on the screen. That they want. I think the first one is a big challenger, but minimum wage is a key component of the demands. They want it increased from the current 30,000 naira to 200,000 naira before the end of June 2023, with consequential adjustments on cost of living allowances like feeding, transport, housing, so, and then they have several other lists on that demand. They want tax holiday for employees, both in government and private sector. Those who earn less than 200,000 naira or 500 USD monthly, whichever is higher. And so living out, well, I think that suggests several other people can take care of themselves, including yourself. Immediate review of the National Health Insurance Scheme to cover more Nigerians and prevent out of stock of drugs. The list goes on.
Yeah, well, it's also important to note here that I think as much as they are doing a good job, they left the most vulnerable. I didn't see anything that touches on the most vulnerable in our society, and that's the problem. Every time.
Have you read the entire list of demands?
Well, the few that I took a cursory look at them. I didn't see specific intervention. And that's why we came up with the position paper, which we have shared with them. I have been in touch with the Labour president and another friend of mine, Mr. Benson, Barrister Benson. Hopefully they will incorporate some of these demands into what they are presenting before the various subcommittee, which unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, I don't see a representations of persons with disability. If there is, I'm not aware of it. But then, if there is not, this is an opportunity for them to incorporate persons with disability, so that we can tell them exactly where it pinches us. But then their demands are genuine. Their demands are achievable. The problem is sometimes is not placing a demand, is the workability and implementation of that demand. And hopefully they will take into consideration various factors, including the economic factors and the ability of the people that will implement some of these measures.
Well, when you make some, will you even tell us where are we in the scheme of things when we talk about providing that infrastructure in the first place to cater for those who are physically challenged? And because sometimes one wonders, the messages, the advocacy that you've been putting over the years, are they listening, or is it falling on deaf ears?
I think they are. When you have lived with a myth for a very long time, it takes consistent banging of truth to demystify that myth. I think we're making headways. I think they are listening. The problem is always in doing. It's one thing for you to listen to an ideology, a policy, or an advocacy that someone is putting across. It's another thing for you to do them. It's in doing that we have problem. Implementation of some of these ideas, some of the things that we have been putting across for that should be done for persons with disabilities. So we're struggling with implementation, and we will not give up.
So from your perspective now, do we have the fundamental, the foundation upon which some of these demands which you are asking that we take cognizance of those with disability? Do we have that?
Chamberlain, that's the thing. The people who try to make intervention for us are ignorant of what we need. That's a major problem. That's where the rubber meets the road. They don't know. I was shocked. I met, and I'm not going to mention name, I met a very highly placed politician, someone that you would say has been a very strong policymaker, coming to me and saying, hey, Jake, I don't know why you think albinism is a disability. I don't believe albinism is a disability. And I said to him, sir, you know how long we've been friends? I didn't recognize you when you passed me. He said, what? What do you mean? I said, I didn't, until you spoke. I said, I struggle with my sight. I can see, Chamberlain, I'm here. You're just a few meters away from me. I can see the total makeup of your face. You're a friend. There are many times you had passed. You had to say hello. I was just commending my friend Mogwe. Many times you passed me. I didn't recognize you, So when people don't know the people that they are trying to intervene for, how can you intervene for them? You don't know what my needs are. You don't know the fact that right now, persons with disability with this subsidy are going to struggle with transportation. Mobility has always been their problem. They're going to struggle with access to health care. They're going to struggle with putting basic food on their table. So what then can be done if you don't know that a person with a disability, a person with albinism struggle with his eyes, is not able to see? I'm here, I'm literally not seeing anything on that screen. How can you intervene for me? So the problem is that when people are in tie and suits in a cozy office trying to make laws, policies, intervention for people that are in the village, that you have never met them, you don't know what their needs are, how can you cater for us? So that's, even when government have genuine intention, good intention, the action can match the intention because they just simply don't know the people that they should be working for. And so there's a need for a whole lot of awareness, deliberate strategic awareness. How many people actually know what fuel subsidy is? These are things.
Apart from the fact that they used to buy petrol a lot cheaper than now.
Exactly. But how many of us have cars to buy petrol?
Well, sometimes they own little generators and they can tell the difference.
Exactly. Yeah. Or they have somebody who have that and all that. But, I think government needs to recognize the need for an inclusive intervention by getting the people that they are trying to intervene for, sit right there and help them make strategic and concrete intervention. That's where the problem is.
And, a lot of people cannot fault that particular argument, but, some people say regardless of government's best intentions, it will always be the greater good to the greater number. There will still be people who will be left out. I guess that's one of the reasons you are making this advocacy, that it shouldn't be people with disabilities.
That's right.
But when I look at the general challenge which you have listed, you've talked about increased transportation costs, reduced mobility and independence. Some people are going to say this is something that everybody are going to face. They're going to have to make a decision on whether or not that trip is important. You're going to have to make a decision on whether, you really want to, you can spare the cash that you want to use for transportation. How does this really impact the community of those with disability in such a way that you can argue that it is much more than anybody else who doesn't have a disability?
Well, first is the level of poverty. Very many of us, and I'm careful not to use numbers because there is no data, but then again, very many of our community members are really poor. But just to bring it home to very important question that you ask, we all go to the market. Simple things like going to the market. Mm-hmm. Simple things like trying to get to the hospital. You know, simple things like visiting family members, not just for social interaction, but for you to get one form of help or the other. Going to school, you know, it can be really difficult if you want to look at the challenges within the community of persons with disability. Mobility is #1 need. You know, if you don't move to certain places, you can't get certain things. If you don't move to, I kept saying hospital, things like hospitals, because there are many of us that are on regular medication and they have to go get those medication. You can think of the fact how hard it's going to be for them. Transportation cost is to the roof right now, you know. And of course, when that happens, it has a ripple effect. It's going to affect how food items moves. It's going to astronomically increase the cost in the market. And you don't blame the market woman. She had to pay extra transportation cost to bring in fruit. So, and don't forget also that there are many of us in the community that have one small businesses or the other, or even they are an employee, okay? And I have over 21 staff, you know, and the feedback I kept getting is it's becoming relatively difficult for us to come to work.
That's everybody. I mean, if you go down the wrong, I mean, from people who, especially those who are at the real bottom, you know, those who are drivers, security people.
I agree with you. You see, that's the problem. We must not equate certain demography of people as everybody. We're not everybody. My challenges are different and can be far more worse than your own challenges.
So that's what I'm asking. You know, what precisely, why do you think that this hits them harder, I mean, than people who would normally be classed as vulnerable?
The poverty index, the poverty level, the mobility issues, the stigmatization and discrimination, you know. Do you know that up till this moment, there are still certain people that wouldn't want to shake my hands? I can't touch a person with albinism. I say the surprise.
Why do they do that?
Well, some of them are still living in the myth and superstition that albinism may be contagious. You know, I mean, I never forget an experience that I had growing up when I went to my uncle's house and the wife was pregnant and they wouldn't let me in. And I'm not ashamed to say this on national television. They wouldn't let me in. And I wanted to know, as a young man, I went asking questions. And someone said, well, I don't want to give birth to a baby with albinism, you know. And look at it. So discrimination plays a very...
That must have hurt.
Yeah, it still hurts till this day.
Yeah, that must have hurt. And really, there's a lot of work that can be done in terms of, you know, removing stigma, removing to show that people with albinism and even living with any kind of disability, you know, they didn't bring it upon themselves. This is something that they were born with, and so there are two sides to the coin. You know, when people say maybe people with albinism cannot or should not be classified as people with disability, because then people. It doesn't mean that they don't have challenges.
Yeah.
Would you say that they fall into the category of, you know, people who just have challenges? For instance, women and young people. Do you think, for instance, that they could be categorized as that, or do you think that it's a little different?
You know, Mark, I'm going to on a national. I'm going to ask you to please help mentor some of our young ladies with albinism, they're the worst hit. You know, they go through all kinds of abuse. You know, and even a situation where some men will say, look, I want to test and see what you look like, you know. And many of them have been impregnated and have babies, and husband walks away from them. These are not, I'm not trying to hype or create any, these are reality, stark reality, you know, that is happening every day, you know. And so it's important to understand that even the CRPD, which is the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability, recognizes albinism with a lot of issues around reasonable accommodation, the issue of discrimination, but our major visible aspect of disability is our sight. Do you know how I went to school? Do you know that once I dropped out of school, I'm self-educated? You know, I have to go to the blackboard to look at the blackboard, you know, and come back to copy what I saw. And between the blackboard and myself, I have missed a lot more component of that statement. That's the struggle. And you're also dealing with a teacher who will never respect you, who disrespects you before the class. You know, and that's why my focus has been education. Get education, whether you're a person with disability and, of course, albinism. Get education. The more you're educated, the less will be discriminated.
Well, quite a lot right there to take in, and quite a lot that people with disabilities go through. So the very essence, the very need, how very important it is for some of this awareness to keep, you know, do what we can to ensure. It's a societal challenge, really. Society needs to actually live up and ensure that we just stop.
Chamberlain, the society needs to fix the mess. It takes individuals like yourself, like John, like several others who have been making serious intervention and giving us the platform. And you know, the thing is that many of us live in denial. I'm not going to live in denial. I'm not going to live in denial of the fact that, you know, there are struggles that the society has created, all right? But I'm not also going to fold my hands and watch me go through the struggle and break down. No. By the way, I want to say it publicly. I love my albinism. I'm not asking for anything less.
All right.
Yes, there are challenges, but I will cope with the challenges and I would turn the tide.
Let's bring in our colleagues in Lagos.
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain. You know, Mr. Pele, it's disheartening to hear about, you know, some of your personal struggles as a result of your albinism, and it just causes one to reflect on the Nigerian disability law, which criminalizes all forms of discrimination against persons with disability. And it says that if an individual is found violating this law, he or she is liable to a fine of 100,000 naira or a term of 6 months imprisonment. The question is, you know, are these laws effective? Who implements these laws? Has anyone, and discrimination abounds, not just against people with albinism, with people with all forms of disability in Nigeria. Has anyone been found guilty and made to face the requirements of this law?
Well, you know, not that I know of, but who are the people implementing? We are the National Commission of Persons with Disability, the Ministry of Justice, to be honest with you, and all the activists and advocates who are pushing for the implementation of this law. I'll give you an instance. I was in a very, very well-known hotel in Abuja, and I parked where persons with disability parks, and stepped out of the vehicle, and the lady looked at me and said, "No, this is not for you. This is not where you should park." And I said, "Listen, I'm a member of the community of persons with disability." And she laughed and said, "Oh, God, don't even go there." You understand? You know, so the level of ignorance of this law is one thing to have a law, is another thing for people to know the law. And that's why even in our organization, we had to do a step down. We like put the law in very readable format and made it very easy flowing for anyone to read and understand. But the government that made the law never took time out to promote the law. And so the law is there. How many people have read it? You know, and one of our interventions, we're trying to print the law into 3 major languages, the Hausa, the Igbo, and Yoruba, so that people can read and understand. But again, 100,000 naira, I don't believe in punitive measure though, but 100,000 naira, anybody can make a joke out of you and decide to pay that and get out of it. But the implementation is always the problem. I can tell you that there are many judges out there that probably don't even know that law exists. And so if you're coming before a judge and telling someone that, look, somebody discriminated me and that's why I brought the person before you, sometimes it's a joke, it's a laughable endeavor, you know. But there are a lot of us who are very passionate about the implementation of the Discrimination Prohibition Act for persons with disability, and we will keep doing that. And of course, there's also a plan to review what is currently in existence, because there are emerging issues around disability, there are emerging legal framework that we need to incorporate in what is existing currently. So there's been very few of such reprimand from that particular act.
And still on that act, Mr. Pillay, particularly as it has to do with your position on protecting the vulnerable, particularly in the aftermath of the removal of fuel subsidy, Marco was asking only a short while ago about the difficulty in getting to work. But what about getting the job in the first place? The law requires that all public institutions should set aside 5% slots for persons with disability. To what extent, have the subnationals been complying with this law to ensure that members of your association get the opportunity in the first place?
Well, the law is there, 5% employment opportunities, but the government that made the law should be the first to start. I can tell you we did a survey just in Abuja on all the ministry. We don't have up to 3%, or we don't even have up to 1% workforce that are persons with disability. The highest person with disability in civil service is on level 13. So you can imagine the impact of that. So we do have that law as a nation. Again, implementation. And I think the highest employer of labor are the private sector. And the private sector are totally unaware of this law. We took the advocacy and awareness to the Chamber of Commerce in Abuja last year. We trained a lot of their members on the employment component of the law and making the workplace disability friendly, including workplace discrimination. And it was an eye-opener for many of them. We've gone to Labour Congress, and the Labour Congress brought a huge audience, and we trained them. But these are skeletal intervention. There is no focused intervention and sustainable intervention, and that's why institution of government needs to step in and take the bull by the horn and ensure the dissemination of this information so that we can have strategic and meaningful implementation. A very good question. Some of the issues around the employment of persons with disability is the mindset of the employer. They believe that we can't do anything, They believe that we're not strong enough. They even believe that we don't have the intellectual capacity, which is an erroneous impression. You know, I know many people in the community that are smart. They are making waves in their space. You know, there are many of us in the community that can get the job done.
Okay.
And let the society give us the opportunity and hold us accountable.
Well, most certainly there are organizations, as you very well know, Mr. Pele, who already take that very seriously. But to the issue on hand, one of the things that you put in your recommendations is some palliative arrangements. You're suggesting transport subsidy. I think it was the House of Representatives that also made that suggestion as well. And I'm not sure whether or not Labour did the same. And you also asked, you're suggesting food banks at the national and subnational levels for equitable distribution of palliative care among persons with disabilities across the country. I've joked around this on this program before. Once you hear palliatives, 2020 comes to mind. The kind of things that happen at that time, a number of people are not going to forget in a hurry. So it just goes back to the question of how. First of all, the feasibility of it, then the practicality of it, and how significantly you think it'll affect or move the needle on the effect of this subsidy removal on the people.
You know, Ayo, the truth is the problem is not some of these ideas and whether it is feasible. It is. It is the individuals that you put there to implement them. If you put an individual who is selfish, corrupt, just like the same way they handle the palliatives in the past, you know, they are bent on enriching themselves at the expense of the poor, you know. And so when you have the right strategy and you have the right thinking individual and the right doing individual, then you get results. Most of the problem with this kind of intervention, and several of them in the past, is that when we finish them, we close. It's like you finish a book and you close the book. We need to go back and do some simple research to understand what happened. You know, what did we do well? What is it that we did wrong? And that's why in our position paper, we're not just asking for this intervention, we're also saying, let's, at the end of the exercise, carry out a survey, a study, a data, so that we can know what happened, who did we reach, how did we reach them, what is the significance, what's the impact of this intervention in the life of the people that we're intervening for. You know, so succinctly put, it's the individual. If you have the wrong individual in the right place, you get the wrong result. You know, if we have true patriots and compassionate individuals who are moved with empathy, they will deliver and touch and impact the lives of the people that they lead.
Let's wind down with your position paper. You, TAF Africa, made some recommendations, some of which includes implement a targeted transport subsidy program specifically designed for persons with disabilities. And you say that this program should provide discounted or free transportation vouchers, passes, or dedicated transportation services to ensure affordable and accessible transportation options. Establish food banks at the national and sub-national levels for an equitable distribution of palliative care that would, again, among persons with disabilities across the country, encourage and incentivize private and public sector employers to implement, workforce inclusion initiatives for persons with disabilities. And you go on to say this can include work from home options, flexible schedules, accessible workplaces, and accessible transportation assistance. And, you know, I did ask about the basis upon which some of these suggestions can be executed. First, who did you submit this to, and how are they responding to it?
Well, you know, access is one thing that we don't really truly have. So I reached out to friends like the NLC president because of the critical role that he's playing with his engagement with government. You know, we did submit to them. We're also trying to reach the President Chief of Staff, who happens to be a good friend of mine. We are reaching everybody that we can reach. That's why we also have reached channels. And it was only last night, late last night, and you said, come over, you know, which is something that I'm very proud of in terms of what John does with you guys. So we're reaching everybody. I don't mind. I would even send it to John because I know he has access, you know. So anybody that can push it to the presidency, to those in charge. But these things are doable, you know. But I want to also speak to the issue of the food bank. I am particularly interested in what happened to those who are not in the metropolis, the locals, those who live in hamlets, you know, how we must reach them, you know. And like I said, if we have the right people and people who have that mindset to truly serve and impact the people that they are leading, these things are doable. They are doable. Like you said to me, the basis. Yes, I was particularly at the forefront during the palliative distribution. I distributed for the European Union, you know, and it was a very simple exercise for us, you know, getting the right people that we know will deliver the food to the people who needs it, you know, and making sure that happened. But Chamberlain, I know we're out. Please, I want to say something that is trending. There's a video that is trending saying that there are some palliatives for persons with albinism. It's gone viral. Please, it is a scam. It is a scam. I'm going to do another video today and see how that can correct that. They are calling the numbers on that and they're swindling people. Do not respond to it.
Wow. All right, we do thank you for coming on, Jacob Pele, founder and CEO, TAF Africa, and we like to believe that those in authority will be listening and then will take this to heart and implement some of them, if not all of them. Thank you, and all the best.
Chamberlain. Thank you, Chamberlain. Thank you, Mowgli. Ayo and Buki, thank you.
All right, well, back in a moment, everybody. Do stay on with us.